India, meanwhile, has abstained on the crucial UNSC vote. The country has now once again maintained its balanced position on the matter, which has divided the world into two political camps, the US and Russia. The UN Security Council resolution sought to deplore in the strongest possible terms Russia's military action against Ukraine by abstaining. India has retained the option of reaching out to relevant sides in an effort to bridge the gap and find a middle path to foster diplomacy. India has said that dialogue is the only answer to settling differences and disputes between Russia and Ukraine. India's representative at the UN, T.S. Tirumurthy, said that India is deeply disturbed by the recent turn of developments in Ukraine and reiterated the government's call for an immediate cessation of violence and hostilities in the region. Meanwhile, the White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said that Washington will continue to engage with India over the Russian invasion of Ukraine and try to bring out some solutions to deal with this military escalation in Eastern Europe.
I would say some were, but I wouldn't say the majority were. And we continue to engage with the Indians, with other ASEAN partners on both what we're seeing on the ground, our continued condemnation of the actions of President Putin in Ukraine, and we will continue to push others to follow suit.
Meanwhile, ahead of the crucial vote, the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken spoke to India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, and during the conversation, Blinken stressed on the importance of a strong collective response against Russia amid this ongoing conflict. The call between the two leaders took place soon after the White House statement said that the Biden administration will have consultations with India to deal with the Ukraine conflict. India so far had a time-tested friendship with Russia, with Moscow being one of its closest allies in the defense sector. Having said that, India's strategic partnership with the US has also grown significantly in the last few decades, with Washington showing particular interest in the developments in Indo-Pacific and also the Quad Group. And now for more updates, especially about India's stand in all of this. Former Indian ambassador to Ukraine, Ambassador S.T. Devre, is now joining us live from New Delhi. Ambassador, thanks so much for joining us on Beyond at this hour. I want your perspective and insights on what do you make of India's stand. We earlier heard the Ukraine envoy to India clearly say that he wants Indian intervention into this crisis. Following that, Prime Minister Modi spoke to Russian President Putin as well. And yet India has abstained on the crucial UNSC vote. What's your take on this?
Well, India has taken a consistent position for last 2 weeks nearly. First the procedural vote and later on discussion on the Minsk agreement. India has held the view that in a situation like this, you have to have dialogue as the only solution. It has to be a peaceful diplomatic solution. Unfortunately, the peaceful solution was not possible because it was given up when the Russian military action started against Ukraine. But India had already said a number of times that in seeking a solution of this kind, legitimate interests, security interests of all parties concerned should be taken into account.
Right.
I think that clearly stated that India was trying to find a common ground, take into account the different perspectives of the countries in the region, in the countries concerned. You see, after all, reconciliation and not domination by one party or the other is likely to give a solution to this. It's not going to be, condemning one side or the other. Whereas, at the same time, India is making it very clear that the territorial integrity and the sovereignty of all countries should be also protected. So I think India has a very balanced, very well-rounded position on this issue. India is already engaged with a number of countries on both sides. Being a member of the Security Council now, we are in constant touch with other countries. And in capitals and elsewhere too, India is engaged. Just now you mentioned Secretary of State calling Foreign Minister Dr. Jaishankar.
Right.
So likewise, India, I think, is trying to find a kind of a common ground. India believes that this kind of situation needs to be handled with a lot of care and deftness. lest it goes out of control. Already there is such a huge human loss and damage to property and everything. I think it is in the interest of all countries concerned to seek some kind of a solution. Yesterday, on your channel, I heard that President Zelensky had made a proposal to have talks with Russia, and the Russian response was also they were going to send a delegation to Minsk.
Right.
Today, I don't hear anything about that, but maybe the Battle of Kiev is raging, and it's a very fierce battle going on. So at the moment, I think that matter relating to talks in Minsk seems to be receding. But I think eventually talks will be only the answer.
Absolutely. Ambassador, I'm sorry to cut in there. I just want your take on something else as well. Given your expertise as a former ambassador to Ukraine, how do you view the developments on ground in Ukraine as of now? We've seen the Ukraine president give a lot of impassioned speeches calling for younger people to take up arms, to donate blood. All this while, Russia, of course, is knocking at the doors. That's what the reports are saying. What do you make of this crisis going forward?
Well, through his speeches, he is certainly boosting the morale of the people of Ukraine. Ukraine, as you know, has emerged as a democracy in Eastern Europe. They've had 5 or 6 presidents ever since it became independent in 1992. There is therefore a representative government. President, I think, is trying to invoke the sense of nationalism, which has been on rise in Ukraine, as in many other countries too in the world. And therefore, he is hoping that there will be resistance to the Russian military operation, or whatever you may call it. And therefore, his 2 speeches in one day on this. Ukrainians, at the moment, I think they are also not sure exactly how the future will be coming to them, because this kind of military situation, it doesn't really augur well. But I think it seems from the television reports and the media reports that they will continue to fight, although they are also pretty clear that before the Russian military might, they have little chance.
Right. Let's talk about this much talked about topic of sanctions now. As we understand, the EU and US have imposed harsh sanctions on Russia. But the big question is, will it isolate Russia from the global economy? And what will be the impact of these sanctions on the global economy at large?
It's a very good question. Well, the severe sanctions include SWIFT, which actually the Europeans are in a position to impose. And SWIFT, I think, have already been now announced. So dollar denomination transactions will be all stopped. The Russian banks will not be able to handle this. Besides that, there will be severe restrictions of import of any high technology by Russia. Russian gas to Germany has already been now stopped because of the non-operationalization of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which has been especially built for supply of gas from Russia to Germany and then to beyond to other European countries. So sanctions may not hit Russia immediately because Russia already has about $650 billion of foreign exchange reserves. They also have huge gold reserves. So I think they may be able to tide over sanctions for some time. But in the long run, I think sanctions will affect them. Of course, they have other friends like China, and they can bank on them in the situation of crisis, financial crisis, etc. They can supply gas to China also. But I think on the whole, this situation is not going to be particularly helpful to Russia. But I'm not sure how long this whole sanction thing will sustain, because your countries in Europe had a very different view with respect to the relationship with Russia.
Right.
And as you've seen, till the very end, German Chancellor and French President were in direct touch with Russia with President Putin, negotiating, trying to find a solution through Minsk agreement and Normandy format and all that. So the interdependence between Germany and Russia, economic interdependence, is considerable. There are large investments on both sides. I read somewhere that even Russians were planning to invest in Germany for improving this energy infrastructure and so on.
Right.
So whether this pipeline can be kept in abeyance for such a long time, I'm not so sure. And SWIFT also, you have to have unity among the all European countries. Whether that can be sustained, it is, I think, going to be a big challenge before the West.
Absolutely, Ambassador. Just wrapping up our discussion here, my final question for you. How do you see India's relations with its two strong allies, the US and Russia, panning out, depending on how it takes a stand going forward?
Well, with Russia, we have a time-tested relationship, goes back 50 years, more than that. And it really pervades all sectors. Not just defense, of course, that is one of the key sectors, but industrial, technological. Russians have shared technology with us, unlike many other countries, cultural, people to people, and so on. So we are in constant touch with the Russian leadership also. All these years, every year there has been exchange of leaders at the highest level between Russia and India. So I don't see much difficulty, much problem in terms of India-Russia relationship. Of course, there will be a lot of collateral damage India is also going to suffer as a result of these sanctions. Number one, in my view, is the whole disturbance in the contemporary global order, balance of power and so on. As long as there was peace and stability in that order, India benefited. There was globalization, there was no disturbance of the value chains, and our trade and business went on very well. Now, with this kind of situation, that may be affected. The oil prices are also going up.
Right. Ambassador Devre, thank you so much for all those insights, and thank you so much for joining us on Beyond World is One with all your perspective.
Thank you.
Beyond World is One is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.